Usually, most of the time, it ends up in a judgment, and with that judgment, a landlord can get possession and can have an eviction.
Right. So like in my case, I don't want to talk about the whole case. I don't want to talk about it, but it wasn't.
I don't
about
even
money.
remember your case.
Yeah, that's great.
That works out.
Did
I
your
guess
guy
that's
even
good.
show up?
The guy didn't show up. That's
Oh,
what
well,
happened.
that made it
That's why I
easy.
made it easier to talk about, right? Because he didn't show up, and it was a case where, in my case, it was I don't know, it wasn't really a paying issue. It was the tenant was just out of control because he had an issue with drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was why I was a victim, which is very weird because I actually evicted a tenant who was paying 4 days in advance every month, which was kind of wild. All right, so okay, so I'm getting all these messages from Glenn because I got all these microphones going on here. Okay, anyway,
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So so you said something about money. So I have a tenant that I'm dealing with, and I'm ready to file, and I'm going to file on Monday, probably at around noon. My question is that she paid me $1,000, but she's still $1,000 behind. So is there like a money limit where you hit a point and you say it's not worth it for this amount and you have to wait it out, or?
It depends on your situation. I have, the big corporate owners that have, 1,000 units or 200 units. Some of them every month, if they're 5 days late, they're filing. They can afford to file 5, 10, 15, 20 landlord tenants a month.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a landlord, it is a hassle. You got to go there. You got to pay the money. That's a decision for the landlord, how many properties you have. If you have management, you let the management take care of that. It really depends. I do have some private landlords that only own 1 or 2 properties. They'll let it go a few months, and then it gets down a rabbit hole.
That's
Right.
a big mistake.
Few
Yeah.
months?
A few months.
Yeah. So we teach them
They
that
try
a
to
lot
be
of
nice.
times,
You know how it is.
So I have to ask you, Your Honor, what happened if a landlord will come to you after a few months that apparently the tenant haven't seems to show any good effort?
Mm-hmm.
This is what, let's say, reason that the tenant will bring to court that will be, let's work it out.
So I try to avoid getting to reasons, because if I get into reasons why tenants can't afford to pay, it's just going to be a sob story. It's going to be emotionally taxing, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, there are situations that happen, but that is not the point. Is you have a contract with the landlord and the tenant to pay every month. I can't get into, well, my dog died or my dad was sick. I avoid that at all costs because it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So then we just get into the money amount, and I really am trying to foster conversation between the landlord and the tenant and a way to work this out and try to work together to get caught up. And most landlords want to get caught up. They want to, if it's a good tenant, they just want to make sure they're paying.
I think all of them.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that the unit will be empty right now.
Yeah.
They need to renovate, right? They need to make it ready. They will have 1 or 2 months that the unit is actually empty.
Yeah, but tenants fall behind. Now, there's been a lot of, especially since COVID, a lot of rental assistance. There's a good
Yes.
program that comes
Yes.
into our court, Epic. They've been great.
We talked about that.
Yeah, and look, it's helpful. There is a pool of funds, and there's a couple private funds as well. I don't know them off the top of my head that'll help tenants out, especially ones with kids that are having trouble catching up on the bills.
I actually had experience with Epic, and I think Larry too.
Yeah, actually, I haven't had experience with Epic, but interestingly enough, we're starting our own charity. Good,
Yes.
yeah.
No, you were away from the microphone.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're starting. Yeah, it's because I'm controlling everything right now. We have our own charity. It's called Lev27.org, and we're starting it. It's almost up. We're almost ready to take donations, and what we're going to be doing is for people who are I mean, you've probably seen this before, where the guy was paying for 3 years, and then all of a sudden 1 month he's behind.
Sure.
Something happened. It was a car accident, and you have no choice, but you have to do what you need to do as a judge. But we want to fly in and rescue them and say, hey, here's what the judge wanted, here's what the landlord wanted, and as long as they have a plan to get back on their feet, we're going to cover their month or 2 of rent.
And really, as the judge, I'm just assessing what the monetary outlay is, how much is owed. I really encourage the landlords to try to work out. They're the ones with the ball in hand once they get the judgment. I explain that to tenants. I'm like, you're not looking at me. You got to look at this landlord, and you got to talk to the landlord and figure out a game plan. Either it's a game plan to pay, do a payment plan, or an exit strategy. And try to do an exit strategy that's fair and in good faith. And I believe most of the time this happens. I don't know. Once they're out of my court, I don't know.
Yeah,
If they
I
don't
mean-
pay, an eviction's filed. If they do pay, I never hear from them. Entry satisfaction. And there we go.
Yeah, right. So by the way, if anybody wants to call in, if you're a landlord or you're a tenant and you have questions about eviction or what you can do, 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137. 4 more times, right? 855-939-1137. God, do you want to say it now?
855-939-1137.
Right. And one
Now
more time.
all the people with the accent can understand
Now
it
the
too.
people with the accent, right? 855-939-1137. So one of the things that I always get as teaching real estate and teaching people real estate is, I wouldn't want to be a landlord. Those tenants never pay, right? And I always tell them the reason they're not paying is because you're not filing. And then they say, well, those judges they're always for the tenant, they're not for the landlord.
No. Well, look, it depends. I don't even think it depends. But Philadelphia, I heard one of your
Oh my
broadcasts.
God.
Philadelphia's a whole different world.
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
don't want to get into what goes on in Philadelphia. I know in Montgomery County, I know my colleagues, we're going to have those hearings. We're going to get them filed within 2 weeks. We're going to have the hearings
Right.
within 2 weeks. We got a process, and we follow the process. And we encourage it. You've got to file. You really do have to do it. But I do understand landlords, I'll wait an extra month. I've known this tenant, and trying to work it out before they get to that point. So, but yeah, no, judges are going to follow the law. At least in Montgomery County we are. Right. And if you owe money, you owe money. And that's the way it is. And if there's an issue with the landlord, if there's black mold or a hole in the roof, we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out.
Well, in Philadelphia, if you have mold, Philadelphia is so bizarre. This is why I always say there are 2 places in the world to invest. One's Philadelphia, and one's everywhere else, and I choose everywhere else. I mean, Philadelphia has some of the strangest laws. If they find mold in the house, you literally have to give the tenant back all the money that they paid plus their security. So they could have been there for 9 months. They got to give them all the money back.
Now, what we know about mold, that maybe I agree about mold. Now it's going to apply. We start to see it regarding lead.
Yeah,
so
lead
until
paint, right.
until
Right.
maybe a year ago, you add the disclosure with your lease regarding the risk of lead that can be inside the house. Now we test the houses. So again, I'm talking about Philadelphia at least. In Philadelphia, if there is a risk, if the tenant bring a test and there is any kind of lead risk inside the house, you as a landlord need to take care of them. You need to put them in a hotel to scrape the paint.
It's insane.
I know.
It's absolutely insane.
But one of the keys, and I get this often, is the communication and a paper trail. So often I have tenants, well, I had this problem. Did you ever email the landlord? No. Did you ever? I texted him once. Did you text him again the next day? No. And they don't understand. Put it in writing. Email.
Right.
Get the email. I say email. Text works. I mean, it's legal and it's evidence, but I think email is the best. You got a timestamp and email. And if they don't respond the next day, email again and ask them to respond, and just have a fostering written discussion. I mean, it's not everything, but it helps with your case, and especially if you're a tenant and you're having issues with your landlord. Put it in writing.
Absolutely true.
I tell you why I'm in love right now.
Move that microphone closer to you.
Because
Pull it closer to you.
every time, every explanation he just gave was him addressing to the tenant. What did you do? What was your action through this process, progress to say, I can't pay my rent, I have a problem in my house, anything. And at least according to my experience, in Montgomery also, actually, I was sitting sometimes in front of a judge and he didn't address the tenant at all. He was talking to me all the time. I was in this court twice that the tenant was not there, that the judge actually tried to convince me. He forced it on me. And so I will wait for Epic because it was during COVID.
What do you mean he forced it on you?
We will wait. And actually in the second hearing, he said, I will make sure your tenant will be here next week. And
So he continued it unilaterally?
exactly.
Yeah.
So he said to me,
I hate that stuff.
my,
That is
my-
so wrong.
my wife was sitting on the bench and she looked at me like, who is going to be responsible that we will be here next time?
Yeah.
He is responsible that the tenant will be here. And this is I think the problem that many people are afraid of. Sometimes some judges believe that all landlords are like Russian oligarchs, and they have so much. And who they are that they will come and file a complaint against a tenant?
Okay. First of all, I wouldn't unilaterally continue. What I would do is try to get a phone number and call that tenant.
So you did
And
that
I
at
do
my
that.
hearing. You did that at my
I
hearing.
do.
You tried to call the tenant.
And I do
Yeah.
that for traffic tickets.
Yeah, wow.
I've done that for criminal matters.
In person, like
In-
while
Well, let's say an officer shows up. It's a traffic ticket for registration was expired. And I have the number of the guy, and he lives right around the block. I'll give a call. And 9 out of 10 times, oh, I forgot. Oh, I'm at work. Oh, this and that. And I'm like, look, just email the registration. Did you get it taken care of? Because, that steamrolls and turns out that.
Oh,
In the
sure.
landlord-tenant situation, I would never, I won't say never because maybe there is some hypothetical situation, but I would call the tenant. If the tenant's not there, they're not there. And that's the end of it. And the hearing goes on. We did that with you, Larry.
Yeah, you would call the tenant, and I knew they weren't going to answer.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that, and I actually thought that was admirable. I'm sitting there going, I just want this to be over with, but at the same time, I thought it was admirable.
But I also want to say, in general, both parties are good. Everybody wants to do the right thing. There are bad tenants. There are bad landlords. I've seen it both. There's no more bad tenants or bad landlords. There's just every now and then there's a tenant that doesn't get it
That are
or a
pros.
landlord that doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And I've had it go both ways. And just got to deal with it. It's frustrating, but sometimes you get them both
I
ways.
get it. All right. So real quick, anybody out there, 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137. You could call up. You could ask about anything you want that has to do with this topic or any other topic. 855-939-1137 is the number. 855.
939-1137. Is it good, Glenn?
Are you talking over me again? I have to. I'm gonna have to mute your
To
microphone.
mute? Yeah, that's the only way because the mask and tape didn't work last time.
I challenged all my friends in Facebook world to call in. Nobody's calling.
That's right. No call in.
It's like
They'll eventually
95 outside.
Yeah,
Everybody's in the
they'll
pool.
eventually call in.
Well, I got like 1,000 Facebook friends, but I think I have 20 that actually go on Facebook and look at it. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So once again, this is I have Judge Ed Levine here. He's a Montgomery County judge, and I'm telling you right now, this is a great. If you're a landlord or if you're a tenant and you want to find out about the actual process of evicting someone or preventing yourself from being evicted,
Filing a complaint.
this is a great place. This is a great time to call. 855-939-1137. Okay, so I got to ask you, so it troubles me the way Pennsylvania does things. So they have this district court, and then they have the real court, which is what? The
Common Pleas Court.
Common Pleas Court,
Yeah.
right. So what is the difference between a district court and a common pleas court?
So the district court is basically the gatekeeper, and landlord-tenant matters originate out of the district court. So what we do is we do the landlord-tenant matters, commercial and private. We do traffic tickets, non-traffic tickets. We do civil matters under $12,000, so small claims. So basically like Judge Judy stuff, which is fun and interesting. And criminal matters, we are the ones that do the arraignments. So when somebody gets arrested and you have to set bail, we determine what the bail is. And also we do preliminary hearings, which is when a criminal comes in after being arraigned and the Commonwealth has to show that they have prima facie enough evidence to charge somebody with the crimes they're charging them with, which is a low burden, but there are times when they don't present enough evidence and charges get thrown out, maybe not the whole case, maybe some of it. So we have those hearings. It's interesting every day. It is a great gig, and in the state of Pennsylvania, there is 500-ish MDJs that each have their own individual district. So I know my properties. I know the landlords. I know a lot of the management that comes in,
Great.
and I get a relationship with them. So I understand that, and I do get repeat tenants. It's amazing how many tenants I have that just pay late. They get filed against every month. $1,200 is a rent. They get a late fee plus the filing fees and all that, and they do it almost every month. And they're paying, instead of $1,200, they're paying $1,700 a month, and they just do it
I know, it's insane.
forever.
And
It
do you
is.
see it from one property to another? So they move from one property to another, and they behave the same way in
Yeah.
the new property.
Yeah, there gets to a point where the property owner, after, we have to file 7 or 8 times, we're not going to renew their lease.
Yes.
And they go to the next property. They do the same. It's not that exaggerated. I've had some that are like 3 or 4 times in a year. And it is interesting. I had one the other day that they signed a 1-year lease. They got renewed, and they were 4 months into the 1-year lease, and I think it was their second time
Yeah.
late. And the landlord's like, well, we want possession now. I'm like, no, you renewed the 1-year lease. You know the game they're playing, you're playing. They always pay. So I always do a pay and stay. Pay and stay is different than possession. So pay and stay is, grant judgment if money, I don't even know.
So what is that? Is that 7 days they have to pay? Or is it 10 days they have to pay?
No, so that timetable it really is determined by the landlord when they get the judgment.
Okay.
The timetable is, okay, the judgment goes in, there's a 10-day appeal period if they think my judgment's wrong. No, usually both parties are sitting there, they agree on the number.
Sure.
During those 10 days, of course, the tenant can pay and do whatever. Once that 11th day hits, the landlord could file for possession, but they don't have to. And I tell the landlord this. I'm like, you got 120 days. You can work with the tenant. You got this. But then I tell the tenant, it ball's in the landlord's court, and if for some reason things fall apart, Epic doesn't come through, this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, landlord's going to file or could file, and even if they do that, something would get posted on your door, and you'd still have 10 days. A lot of people fear, am I going to go to jail? Are they going to just come in and take my stuff? There's a process.
Yeah.
It takes time, and you have to just follow the process. So you get panic on the tenants, and most landlords, they know the process. Most of them do. Some of them do.
Interesting. So let's go over the process. So the first thing is my tenant's late, and I always tell people that I file on the 15th. So if I hold to that, which I do, on the 15th I file. So I get a court date on the 1st or the 2nd of the next month-ish, right?
Yeah.
Then I get that court date. Now they owe 2 months, right?
Well, you got to make sure you check, okay, additional rent remaining due at the hearing.
Did you guys hear? Say that again.
So one of the boxes you check, you put down how much is owed,
Right.
but then you can also check off additional rent remaining due at the hearing, because the 17th of May, they may owe something, but you have the hearing on June 5th. Now they owe June, they haven't paid that. You want to be able to add that into
Absolutely.
the
I
judgment
always
as well.
put TBD.
Okay.
Because you never know. Because sometimes it get postponed, and sometimes you get the hearing in a week. Sometimes it can be 10 days.
It's one of those things. It's not hard, fast. I think if a tenant objected to additional rent being put into the judgment because they didn't check the box, I'd honor it. But usually tenants aren't aware of that. They don't know. So the TBD
Right.
would hold up. And by the time we get there on June 5th,
Sure.
that extra
sure.
money is going to come in.
All right,
Here's
so,
the rent.
so real quick, there's a couple of guys online. Hold on, guys. I know George and Gary, just hold on. I don't want to end this conversation because it's actually a really good piece of conversation. So
Amazing.
just stay online. So all right. So then you go to hearing, and I win as the landlord. Then what happens? He's got 10 days to appeal.
10 days to appeal. Well, both of you have 10 days to appeal.
Okay.
Either party can appeal.
Right. I'm assuming I've won. I'm assuming I
won.
won the hearing. Right.
And it's not a win. Again, it's a determination of what is owed. And really, that's what it is. Unless it's possession, and you win possession.
Well, I didn't go to possession. That's why I'm going now.
Yeah.
So we have 10 days. So they don't pay. They make a promise to pay. 10 days later, they didn't pay. Now the 11th day, I can go into the court and I can file for possession.
You file for possession.
So what's it called the first time you go and file?
Complaint.
Complaint. You're just filing a complaint.
Yeah, landlord-tenant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But okay. So now when I go in for possession, how many days does it take before I get a court hearing for possession?
You don't get a hearing.
Okay.
That is not a hearing. What that is we take the paper, we process it, we give the paperwork to a constable. The constable then posts something on the door saying, here you go. You got 10 days to vacate the property if it's a possession.
Extra 10
or
days.
you have 10 days to pay the amount that's owed,
Okay.
or you're going to lose possession.
Got it.
And that's what happens.
Yeah. And that now, so now the constable reaches out to me or reaches out to the landlord. And now, I don't know if you can even answer this question, but would you recommend that the landlord be there the day the constable shows up?
I don't think that's necessary.
Well, somebody's got to open the door.
Well, no, the constable. The day the constable shows up to take possession.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
of
yes.
course. You have to
I
be.
would absolutely
Yeah.
have the
Right.
landlord there. Yeah, I got some stuff. I had,
I
one,
bet you have some stories.
I had one where, and this was a real shame. I got really upset. They worked with Epic. Epic had a deal. The deal was on the table.
Right.
Money was going to be exchanged, and for some reason, the landlord or the law firm representing them on that 11th day filed for possession, even though they knew a check was coming. The check didn't come yet, but
I
there were
would've done the
email
same thing.
exchanges between Epic
Yeah, I
and the
would've done the
landlord and
same
everybody. Checks coming. Check still didn't come by the day of the lockout, and the constable, the manager was there and still told him to lock him out. And it's like, really, you're the one who signed off on this agreement with Epic. The guy was apoplectic, the tenant. He was like,
bet.
oh my God, I'm getting locked out of my home. I've got we got it all in writing. And the only thing that's happening is the check just hasn't come yet. That's why a landlord, you got to have a little grace. They didn't. Like,
Well,
I sent
okay,
a
so-
scathing email.
Well,
to
I'll
them.
go
second,
back and
so-
forth on that statement. I, as a landlord, look, I mean, I've never had it go to that last day, but I've had tenants where they literally paid on the ninth day, which is ridiculous.
Oh, I've had tenants, not me personally, but I've had my
Yeah.
constable tell me tenants come as I'm undoing the locks with the money.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah. No. And it never happens with me. It happens with my property manager
Yeah.
in Lehigh Valley. So I manage some of my own properties, which this stuff never happens, but it does happen in my Lehigh Valley properties. And they do. They show up the next day with all the money.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy.
Well, it's where do they get them? I mean, they may go to a church. They may
Right.
have a friend. You
Right,
find it
right.
somewhere. They get it, and when they get it, and they get it in. And again, most tenants don't want to be late. They don't want to not pay. They want to pay. It's just
So if we're talking about full eviction from beginning to end, it sounds like 45 days is even long.
beginning at the well, then you got to give the notice to quit too.
Right.
And
So
do all
let's
that.
get into notice to
And it
quit.
takes time to get the hearing date.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
let me do this real quick because I don't want to lose the guys online. George, are you still there, George?
Yes, yes.
All right. What's going on, man? What would you like to talk about?
The slip and fall. I had an incident where one of my tenants fell,
Yeah.
and it was like 9 months, and nobody told me anything until the last day she moved, and they filed for damages. And what can I do as a landlord? Because they're saying that there was enough light illuminating in my apartment,
Well,
and
that
I can't
sounds-
afford to have.
That sounds like a civil matter.
Yeah. Right.
That's not really a landlord. If she's suing you because she slipped and fell, I think the statute of limitations is 2 years. So
think so,
yeah,
too.
9 months later.
Yeah.
I mean, and are you insured? And do you have an attorney for that? And that's a slip and fall sort of thing. So
Did she actually file, George?
Yes, she did.
So
the
you
case
got-
is settled, but
Okay.
they had my insurance covered it, but
Okay,
I
all
was dumbfounded by how they finagle the system where they can get a claim without really any baseless proof that they fell.
well, I'll just say this: it's settled. I mean, if the claim was totally baseless and your insurance company wanted to fight it, they'd fight it. Maybe it was baseless, maybe it wasn't. I don't know the facts.
Or maybe they
so-
paid him so little it wasn't worth.
Yeah,
it wasn't worth
exactly.
fighting. But George is mad because his insurance went up.
You would think. You know, it's interesting. I've had a couple of. I had one case where it was Uber getting sued by a driver, and you think Uber's. It's for $2,000. They'll probably
Right.
just pay it or do whatever. They flew a woman out from San Francisco, an attorney, to come out for this case, and she rocked it. And she won that case. I've had other. Who was the other
But I
one?
can tell
lately?
you why.
Why?
They did that because they didn't want to set the precedent.
Yeah,
They would sooner spend $20,000 fighting the $2,000 case so somebody else doesn't bring up the $2,000 case.
absolutely.
That was their reason.
I've
And if
seen
she-
that with other big companies.
If she won, she got her legal expenses too.
A pretty. The
The Uber lawyer.
Uber. Well, they weren't suing; they were getting sued.
Yeah.
So
But still, she won the case.
She-
So I guess she deserves.
No, she doesn't get. She doesn't. It's in the United States. This is interesting. In the United States, you don't automatically get the legal expenses unless you sue for them. So you have to do a countersuit to sue for the legal expenses.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
But in a landlord-tenant complaint, there is a section in the form regarding how much
Yeah.
your legal expenses are going to be, and do you want to add them?
Oh, that's an interesting point. There is that, and it's funny because some law firms only ask for a reasonable amount, actually nominal. I mean, I have one firm they ask for about $250,
Right.
$300. I had one guy come in. This guy, his client was a young guy, probably went to your class. I'm not. he purchased a property with a tenant who was living in it for 8 years. She
Amazing.
was about 4 months into a 12-month lease, and he filed to get her evicted because she had a pet cat, and the lease says no cats. But she had lived there for 8 years with the constructively. She was allowed to have a cat, and it was the most nominal thing. I'm like, is this cat really doing anything? You're just trying to get the property, flip it, and do what you want to do. The attorney for this case wanted $1,500. I'm like, are you kidding me?
For one hearing?
For one hearing. He's like, how about halfway? I'm like, how about nothing, and don't come in here and file until this is done. She was paying. She was doing everything right, except she had a cat. This is an old lady. I'm like, come on. Give it 8 months.
My
You'll
God.
get to take possession. The lease will expire. But don't try to push it through the system.
Yeah, exactly.
But the $1,500, I was just like, really, man?
All right, so
George, can we ask how much was the lawsuit?
George,
I think George
They
left.
originally wanted they originally wanted $250,000.
Oof.
They got 250,000.
No.
That's what they ask for.
Oh, yeah,
250.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to say they got 12,000.
Yeah. No, they got 27.
27,
I was going to
that's
say
even-
25.
That's even surprising. I'm surprised
Yeah,
that they did
but-
that.
As a landlord, what can landlords do to prevent these frivolous lawsuits? Because it's draining to have your insurance goes up and all the frustration and time that you have to deal with
So-
someone who's unstable.
Let's
So if
let's
you-
have the worst
Property.
landlord. Let's have the worst landlord answer that question.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
do
answer
the
the question.
opposite of what I'm saying. No. But so everybody do it differently. Some people insure all their properties under one umbrella. I like to do a separate insurance policy for each property and have a $1 million liability for each one of the properties, exactly for this matter. So I won't worry for anything when things like that happen.
So, George, he's basically got my answer too. The answer is just insure the property, and you know what? Don't just because just because it's your insurance company, you don't have to cooperate a lot. You know, you do have to give them little things, and if they say you have to show up for a hearing, you don't have to. You know, they want to negotiate, great. You could tell them, hey, don't pay it. You can do anything you want, but don't work so hard, and most of all, just don't care. I mean, I actually had one where I had this was an old one, about 20 years ago. One of my properties in Trenton, the pilot light in the stove went out. It went out. So
Okay.
the woman, decides to light the pilot light, and you know what she does, right?
Boom.
She
take
turns the
drawer-
gas to 500,
Oh
and she
my
puts
God.
her head inside the oven and lights the match. Well, the explosion, put scars all over her face, all
Yeah.
over her arms, all over her body. And she called me up and she told me what happened 2 days later because she was in the hospital. And I said, "Oh my God, that's horrible." And the first thing I said is, "I will get a new stove with an electronic ignition out there tomorrow." And I said, "Do you need my insurance company information?" And she said, "No, I got it. I got my insurance going to take care of it." Now, she could have sued me. She could have won. She might not have won. I don't really care. But what's the difference? Even if she would have sued and she would have got that's what the insurance company's for. I don't really care.
The lawyer in me does want to point out, he said the word frivolous. If it is indeed frivolous, again, the insurance company would have fought it. And it's a high burden to show for. So I'm not saying it was or wasn't. I don't know what happened, George, but
Yeah, exactly.
don't assume it's frivolous.
Yeah.
Let the lawyers fight that one out. But things happen. So, fortunately, I don't think it affected you that much. I think
Yeah.
you have the property and you're renting it out.
George, we appreciate the call, man.
I mean, would you recommend?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
No,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, what can we put cameras or something like to prevent
Yeah,
that? Or to have
sure.
some proof?
I mean, any evidence you have that counters whatever they're saying happened, that's great. I mean, put a ring. I think as a landlord, you're allowed to have cameras on outside.
Yeah,
the
outside, but
property.
not
Yeah.
inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with the cameras too.
Yeah,
Where-
I'm
where
sure
they're
there's
pointed
legal
to.
thresholds.
Yeah. But okay. But George,
Thank
we
you very
appreciate it,
much for
man.
taking my call.
Thanks, man. All right, so
Thank
real
you.
quick, everybody, this is Larry Steinhaus. This is Investor Schooling Live. I'm here with Dr. Deb and Omri and Judge Ed Levine and his son, who eventually we're going to get to. Hopefully we'll have time. I know he has some questions, some financial questions. But if you want to call in, 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137. You can ask your questions to the judge, myself, or anybody else here, 855-939-1137. And don't forget to go to investorschooling.com and sign up for this Thursday's class. What else do we have to tell them, Deb?
Money multiplier.
Money multiplier, right? Glenn's saying we need more Dr. Deb and less Omri.
Oh, there we go.
Glenn, something like that, Glenn. You should just say that. so real quick, we have an event coming up on August
I
12th.
think it's the 12th.
August
yeah.
12th. It's the Money Multiplier. We do these events every once in a while. They're full day events. It's $97 to attend. You go to 4mmw.com, the number 4mmw.com, and you can feel free to join us there. All right, let's bring in Ice Cream Gary. What's going on, Ice Cream Gary?
Good afternoon, Larry. I just want to mention I received your book.
Oh,
Money
good. I'm
Hacks,
glad.
Thursday. It's an easy read, a good read. I'm halfway through. And my next question, Larry, was, did you open your ice cream corner?
We did. We opened about a little over a month ago, and it's doing okay. I mean, it's covering the bills, which is the best part. But I really was hoping that the guy I have running it would make a little bit more money. But I think in time it will. We had some issues with permits and some issues with this and that, but we got it open. Luckily to the power of Facebook, I should say, we had so many followers on Facebook before we even opened that when we posted that we were having trouble opening, somebody tagged the mayor of the town, and the mayor called me the next day and worked it all out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that I'm hanging out with President Trump. I'm hanging out with the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. I've got a judge in my studio, and the mayor of towns are calling me. So I must be becoming somebody pretty popular.
And then don't forget that your book just went bestseller.
That's right. My book, by the way, Gary, my book is now a bestseller, and the Los Angeles Tribune claims it as a bestseller.
Nice.
Or like the best read.
Well,
or something,
Larry, we're going
bestseller,
to
yeah.
petition.
What's that?
Larry, we're going to petition Greg Stocker to get you on full time.
Yeah, you definitely got to call him up. You got to call on Monday. You got to call on Monday. You got to call the show in the morning show, the Kale and Company show, and and ask for Greg and talk to him and say, hey, you got to get Larry Steinhaus his own show.
Yeah.
There you go, Larry. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. All right, anybody else want to call in? 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137, 855-939-1137. One more time, 855-939-1137. Hey, Glenn, why don't you take us to a commercial, and we'll get back and we'll find out what Noah wants. This is Larry Steinhaus with Investment Schooling.
All right.
You're clear.
Will the Great Reset won't apply to those who own real
Everybody
assets?
says Army talks
At
too much,
Investment
Glenn.
Schooling, we teach you how to own real
I was just joking.
Semi-annual.
and
right?
other investments, including stocks, stock options, and
can have you
even
in
the
class. That
basics
might
of
be more fun.
cryptocurrency. We
I
even
don't know what I
how
can
to pay
teach you. See, I
thousands
don't
less
know
in
money.
taxes
He knows money.
legally.
He knows
So
advice.
go to
He's
investorschooling.com
landlording,
Wow,
so
and
yeah,
find out
that's
how you
true.
can attend a
Absolutely.
complimentary class
Just so
this
you guys know,
Thursday.
we are still live
Investorschooling.com.
on
On
Facebook.
the-
On
yeah.
Facebook. We're not live on the air, but live on Facebook.
This is Larry
Wouldn't you
Steinhaus, and you
recommend
have
people
probably heard my
to
radio
bring a
shows and
lawyer
listen
to a
So, Larry?
landlord-tenant
Yeah,
complaint?
hold on.
more money
Yeah,
and
what's
pay
up, Glenn?
less taxes.
So I would ask Omri to just get a little closer to his mic again.
Can I just mute him?
You can mute him. Yeah, sure. I
gotta
just
get
want to
closer
make
to
sure
your
he's
mic.
close to his mic when he talks. And also, you may want to. I sent you the message. Yeah, you just the same way we repeat the number for the listener a bunch of times. You really want to reinforce for them what who your guest is. And,
Yeah,
and his,
I got
'cause
it.
They sometimes miss it.
Yeah, I got
Or
that. I
they'll tune
appreciate
in
that.
late and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Downtown is around the corner. What does that mean
Time
for
is
you?
going by so fast, I'm
Maybe that
forgetting.
could
Learn how to
Yeah,
take
yes,
advantage of this opportunity, like how to buy discounted properties with
We
absolutely
can talk
no money
about
out of
it
your
on
pocket.
Yeah.
Can it
the
be
air.
done? Yes, it
mean,
can.
how many-
Can you learn how to do it? Yes, you can. Go to investorschooling.com
after
and find out how
COVID-
you can attend a complimentary class this Thursday.
got 25
Investorschooling.com. This is Larry.
Okay, I got
All
one
right,
more.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Afraid of the
Yeah,
Great
I would answer
Reset?
that on the
Well,
air
the
for
Great
you.
Reset won't
Yeah.
apply to those who own real assets. At Investor Schooling, we teach you how to own real assets like real estate, gold, silver, and other investments, including stocks, stock options, and even the basics of cryptocurrency.
We think
We
people
even
like
teach you how to pay
Glenn.
thousands less in taxes.
Omri, I'm going to bludgeon you with that mic if you don't stay close to it.
I will use this one. It's much better.
Here we go.
.com.
Not an idle threat.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Investor Schooling Live. This is Larry Steinhaus. I am the CEO of Investor Schooling. I'm here with Judge Ed Levine. This is a pretty interesting conversation. I'm here with Omri, too. Don't be upset, Omri. I will mention you. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Of course, I'm here with the most important person in the room, or the smartest person in the room, is Dr. Deb.
Hey, everybody.
And then we also here with Noah Levine, too, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So, Noah, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you came today?
Yes.
Yeah, talk closer to the microphone.
Yeah, so I'm here with my dad, who's obviously the judge, and I've tuned into your show a number of times, and I thought it was a good chance to meet you and learn some more about real estate and landlord tenant and finance. So, yeah.
So should I give him a free autograph?
You should sign his book.
Wow.
He'll be so excited. What I thought was great was Noah was surprised that we actually had a pretty decent setup, and he expected some like little hole in the wall place with like microphone coming out of the
Yeah,
out of the
check
desk.
out.
So,
Tell
and he was
everybody that's
actually
a total.
impressed.
It
I
is
mean,
a pretty cool place.
yeah, tell everybody what you see, because most people who watch it can see it, but
I
people
see
on the air.
microphones coming out of the table like spider legs, and
What are you?
nice.
What are you, an author of a book?
could be.
Annoying people.
So what did you? So you're going for finance, correct?
Yeah, right now I'm getting my master's in financial engineering at Lehigh.
So I'm going to tell you right now, everything they're teaching is wrong.
Okay.
Just keep that in mind.
Financial engineering. What does that even
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
What does that mean?
That's, like pricing certain financial derivatives is a good example. Like options, the way they're priced has to do with like the stochastic nature of the equities or the whatever the underlying security is. Credit default swaps, trading those, pricing those, that type of. There's a lot. Like any trading strategies involved in the market.
Wow, I don't think anything that you teach will match at all with what.
No, so he's what he's, and it's interesting because what he's teaching is he's teaching the actual math, which I purposely don't teach, like the delta, the gamma, the beta. What was the other one?
Row and
Exactly. We go through these. I every once in a while somebody forces me to teach this, and I'm like, but it doesn't matter because the price of the option, all of these factors change every second.
Right.
So the price of the option changes, the price changes every second, but all that matters is are you going to make money or are you going to lose money?
Right.
And I teach how to avoid losing money.
Right.
It doesn't always work, but most of the time it works. So that's what I'm teaching. That's why I don't bother. Like sometimes I'll say that I'll talk about the delta, the gamma. Most of the time I'll talk about the delta, but who cares?
Yep.
It's not that important. If the stock goes up 1 point and your option goes up 60 cents, who cares?
Right.
It's not that important. What's really important is how much did you pay for the option, how much are you going to make, and how much are you going to lose if you stick in there too long and keep going to a bad place.
So then, Noah, what's your end game? Like, so you're going to get your master's in financial engineering, and then what?
I would like to get into the quant space, which is trading different financial securities in different ways to make money. So like you said, trading options is one example of what something a quant might do, but they also would price these options and make a market for these options. So that's, and they also it's not just options. There's ETFs, a lot of debt derivatives, stocks, all of it.
So the best place to go to learn that is go to investorschooling.com.
That's right.
And you can learn how to make money doing this instead of just using all your dad's money for your education. So I had to go back to you. I had a question for you. So you said something interesting. You said the lawyer in me before. And are you a lawyer?
I am a lawyer.
Okay.
I went to Temple Night School, graduated in 06, but I do want to point out for these MDJs, the 500 I said,
They don't
I think
have to be
most are
lawyers.
not lawyers.
I
I think
know.
about half. They don't have to be lawyers. And people always ask, well, shouldn't they have to be lawyers? I look at it pragmatically. The lawyer in me says, they should be lawyers. But, there are good judges that know the law that aren't lawyers. There are bad judges that are lawyers that don't know diddly-poo.
Okay.
You got to learn the stuff. And, I have a good friend of mine. He just got sworn in for a vacant judicial position, and he's been a lawyer 20 years, does a lot of criminal defense, but he's like, I don't know what to do with landlord-tenant, never done it. I'm like, don't worry, I'll teach you. You'll get the ropes in about a month or two.
That's interesting.
You'll be good.
So I'm going through this whole big thing with the tax collector. You should probably look it up. Talk to Alfarano.
Oh,
Talk to him about it.
Mark?
I don't want to get into. I mean, by the way, he's out of it, so you could talk to him about it. But you probably could talk over a nice game of golf or a beer over that whole thing.
Usually a beer.
Yeah, because it's an interesting case. But I have to take this now to
Montgomery.
Yeah, Montgomery County Court, because this thing it's been a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll probably tell it to you off the air, because I don't want to. I don't know. I'm wondering if it's an ethic issue. It may or may not be.
Well, Amir Omri had a question for me.
So my question while we were in the commercial break was, what's your recommendation for a landlord? Do you think it's necessary to come with a lawyer?
It depends on the situation. If it's just your basic, hey, he owes me this much money, here's the ledger, I don't think you need a lawyer for that. If it's getting complicated, if you got a nasty tenant that's claiming this, that, and the other thing, you may want to have a lawyer with you. And it depends how much experience you have doing that and going into the court. I mean, I get a lot of authorized representatives. They're not lawyers, but they represent Scully Company that has Hatfield Village, for example. They know what they're doing. But when there are cases with an ornery tenant, let's get the corporate lawyer for this one. So I know it's going to be an interesting one when he steps or she steps foot into the court for that. So it really depends. The little guy landlord that owns 2 or 3 properties, it's tough to get a lawyer. It's expensive,
Yeah,
but it's also very aggravating sometimes.
Yeah. And
I was
the
in
lawyers
court.
don't want to work with you.
It seems like that You need to be in the lawyer just to sometimes just so you will be able to present your status. If you have a tenant in front of you and the tenant, we say there are no bad tenants. There are only bad landlords.
That's what. Yeah, right.
If you have a pro tenant, a tenant that knows what they're doing, and they come in and say, "I didn't sign this lease in this date," while their signature is next to the date, and you need to sometimes deal with people that are pro. They know how to try to use the system, to trick the system.
I'll just say sometimes having a lawyer doesn't guarantee anything. I've had some bad lawyers come in. They didn't win diddly poo, and I think their client felt, oh, well, I have a lawyer, I'm going to win. And no, it doesn't work that way either.
Absolutely not.
So,
Yeah, so I've also I'm going to tell you, I've had 2 cases so far, and they're all related to this tax collector issue. And I had one court and another court, and in both cases, it seemed like because the township had an attorney and I didn't. It seemed like the judge felt like, you know what, let's just make this guy go away and make him lose, and he'll go away.
Yeah.
Because they have to see that attorney again, and that's the way I felt when I left.
hopefully it wasn't me. I try not to
No,
make people
you
feel
wouldn't be
that
here.
way.
If you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I would be throwing darts at you.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lawyer comes in, they're going to articulate the case, they'll know the case, so they're more prepared. But you know what? As at the MDJ level, I understand people can't afford lawyers. People come in pro se. It actually sometimes can be an advantage not to have one, because
That's what
I'm
I
going to
would say.
empathize a little more with the guy without the lawyer trying his best to just.
Yeah.
And if they do it sincerely, they're swearing on the Bible too,
And they
hey,
get away, and they can get away with more. So a pro
Yeah.
se. So if I go in, and I don't fully understand the court procedure, although I'm learning it really well.
Well,
But
with MDJs, it's pretty loosey-goosey
Right.
anyway on procedure. I mean, I don't want to keep it that formal, because everything at our level also is de novo, which means if somebody appeals, it's brand new.
Right.
All that stuff we argued and fought about in front of the
Sure.
district judge, it's gone. It doesn't mean anything anyway. They go up to county court and they're going to argue it, and they're not going to go, well, what did they say? It's not on record. So it's de
Yeah,
novo.
right. I agree. So I'm actually. So one of the things I'm actually dealing with right now is I was suing somebody. I won a default case. They didn't. So by the way, just so you guys know, and I'm sure you'll agree, if you ever get a letter from a court that says you're going to be sued, you must answer that letter. You must go to the courthouse and say you're going to defend yourself, or give it to an attorney and tell them you're going to defend yourself. So the person I was suing never did that. They never went to the courthouse. So I won by default. Then that person received a letter that said that they lost, and then they have 30 days to appeal that decision. And if they do not appeal that decision within 30 days, it's over.
Done.
Now the problem is this person hired an attorney, and they're trying to do a non-proton,
Non-proton.
which is absolutely ridiculous. But we'll see what happens.
In your case, it might be. The non-proton is. It happens a lot in traffic tickets.
So why don't you explain what that means, non-proton?
Non-proton. Don't ask me what it means in
I'll tell you what it
English.
means. It means before is after,
Before,
Give me
or
a
after is
chance, yeah.
before, or something like that. It means you're turning back time.
you should be a lawyer. You know your Latin better than me. But in traffic tickets, there are a lot of times people just ignore it. They get the
Right.
ticket. And then it's 3 years later, and they're like, "Oh my God, I got this, that, and the other thing. I need to get my driving record back. I got to work. I got to do this." They file the non-proton. It's basically an appeal outside of the appeal period, and then they go in front of a judge and, oh look, here's what's going on, and I just want to get my license. Whatever gets worked out, but it happens primarily in traffic tickets.
Right.
Overdue and expired.
Yeah, I think it was a good play by the attorney, but
Yeah.
I don't think they stand a chance. From what I understand of this, there has to be a reason. Like, the guy was in the hospital. He didn't receive the letter. The clerk that he filed the response to didn't file it properly.
Yeah, I think the threshold would be higher in a civil. for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah, so I'm curious to see. I'll let you know how it turns out. But it absolutely blew my mind, because as soon as I sent him a demand letter after the 30 days were up, I sent him a demand letter. That's when I heard from the attorney.
The law.
Yeah,
Legal
so
stuff.
I want the real law. I don't want the law that's made up at the from that judge that sits behind the counter and makes up his own law.
Now, we don't make it up. I mean, the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
The law is the law. I mean, but you do get situations where you're trying to do what's right and what's fair. I had one. I don't really want to get into detail. I had a tough one the other day. It was a mobile home thing, and there was a dog involved in biting, and
Oh boy.
it was very borderline whether she violated the rules of the homeowners association, and the penalty was pretty severe. It was eviction, and it's an 80-year-old lady. The dog got off the leash, and by the way, the police didn't charge dangerous dog or anything like that. I was just ruling on the eviction and trying to figure out what's fair, because I have a woman who got bit, and I have a woman whose dog bit him, and I have 5 other people who were vouching for the dog, and it was just hard either way. There was no winning
Sorry to
on
hear
that
that.
one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
a lot of times, and this happens with landlord tenants, I'm trying to figure out what's the right thing, what's the fair thing. I've had cases where a tenant is behind and we're talking about it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to continue this 4 weeks. Just so, if what you're saying is true or what you're saying is true and you need to do this and get that check, maybe we could forego all these issues, come back in 4 weeks. And a lot of times, 4 weeks later, the landlord will send in a letter saying, hey, it's been resolved.
That's great.
We don't need to do anything.
Because the authority
so-
is involved, so the tenant take it more seriously. That's what you think?
No, maybe they're waiting on a tax return or a health insurance check or something like that. Sometimes it's just a money thing that hasn't come through here or there. It can get rectified.
And
Hold on. All right, so real quick, this is Larry Steinhaus. This is Investor Schooling Live. I'm here with Judge Ed Levine, and we're having a great time, I guess, talking about being a judge, talking about the law, talking about landlord-tenant complaints. And it's interesting because if you go to court, you become intimidated, right? You actually went to court, Debbie,
Yeah.
right? You went to court and you were so intimidated.
I was.
And it was actually she had a possible case, but she was it wasn't a landlord tenant case, it was a civil matter. And I was kind of helping her with her a little bit, but I'm not a lawyer, so I can't stand next to her and whisper in her ear.
Yeah.
I actually was sitting in the back and just watching, and she blew it because she didn't want to be aggressive. She was afraid that the judge might say, be quiet. The defendant was lying, and she was just sitting there nodding her head and not saying he's lying. So what is real court etiquette?
Oh, well, it really, at my level, it depends a lot on the judge and their demeanor. I am definitely one of the more I want people to be comfortable when they come to my court. I mean, I have concert posters in my court. So,
That's funny.
and I wear
Amazing.
flip-flops under my robe. I want it to be a place where people feel like they're being heard and they're getting a fair decision. And I don't want people to feel intimidated. I got interns sitting in the back just hanging out.
Right.
You came in. I just wanted
yeah.
everyone to be comfortable. It shouldn't be a feeling of intimidation.
Yeah, it wasn't that. When I went, that wasn't.
It was just a frustrating opponent.
It was like, this is what's going on, and it was a very not friendly environment.
Well, if somebody's confrontational, a judge should be able to pick up on that too. I mean, we pick up on, you're talking, but I'm looking at the defendant, and they're rolling their eyes or they're exasperated, and that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't play well when you get defendants or tenants or whatever. You can pick up on insincerity. You can pick up on credibility, things like that, and that's part of what we have to do.
Hey, yeah, that's interesting. I like it. By the way, if anybody wants to call in, we got just a couple more minutes. 855-939-1137. 855-939-1137. Of course, if you want to go to investorschooling.com, you can sign up for this Thursday's class. It's going to be another good class. I got a couple of special guests coming this Thursday. 855-939-1137. Anybody have a question for the judge? Feel free to call in. What's up, Omri? I know you want to talk. I can see it in your face.
Well, I just have a question. So before Omri gets on, and
All
since
right.
they're asking to talk to me a little bit more, I do have a question. So one of the reasons that I kept my mouth shut is that I didn't want to be that crazy woman who kept interrupting the other guy when he was trying to tell his story. So, and that was where I was coming from, because I didn't want to come off that way as, keep interrupting.
But
because
that's
then I didn't
good.
know how-
Self-control and patience, and you wait and you're like, Your Honor, this is all false. This is, instead of every time they say something false,
So that's what
control
I
yourself.
did, but it didn't
Did
work.
you
in
lose?
I lost. It was,
No,
it was not in my favor.
I've been
She
shushed.
didn't do it. She didn't. So the problem was, and sorry, I don't want to get into the case, but it was while I was watching it, the guy kept saying that when you brought it in, it had all these problems, and it didn't. That was, so it was a transmission case. So it had all these problems, and every time he said that it had all these problems, you should have interrupted. None of those problems happened when I brought it in. That happened when I picked it up, and that was the difference. That was what you were suing for. You were suing because he broke your transmission, and and he was saying that when you brought it in, it did this, it did this, and did this, and you didn't say anything. That was where I would have absolutely he's lying.
Can I just say I hate those car cases. I haven't had one in a while, but man, let me tell you, I don't know diddly about cars. And I get a mechanic saying this, and I get somebody else saying that. I mean, in general, it's always nice to have, especially if you're the plaintiff and you feel like the mechanic did something wrong, to have another guy who's a mechanic there saying, well, here's what I saw. Having an expert, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Because the mechanic's going to say, oh, I did this, this, and this. It's tough. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And also what you're battling against sometimes is these mechanics are local. They live in the district where the judge lives. Maybe they even fix the judge's car. That would be a recusal. But, you kind of know some of the people in the area. The mechanic would process. Well, you might have filed it where you live. So I don't know the details. All I'm saying is I hate car auto cases.
So
They're the
here's the
worst.
question. So you mentioned the word recusal, which it's a really interesting word. It means that you have to walk away from the case because of.
I feel like I can't be fair and impartial.
Right. So what happens now if I have a couple of units that I need to go in front of you now because you're here?
I would say I don't think I would need to recuse. You've been on the show. Look, I'm friendly with lawyers. I'm friendly with
Sure.
police officers. You can have a friendly demeanor in a conversation. Do I feel like if you come in and you got a stinker of a case, I'm going to still rule for you? No. I'm going to rule against you. And that's the type of relationship I want to have, to be able to tell you the truth.
Cool.
I have that with lawyers. I have lawyers I'm friends with. I'm like, you had a dog and you lost, and they know it. Sometimes they know they have a dog, but they got to come in and advocate for their
Right.
client. So it's something I have to really be cognizant of. I don't want to recuse if I don't have to, because that passes it off onto another judge. I don't want to give one of my colleagues extra work that they don't need. So I take it seriously, but I think I understand where that threshold is. So if you come in front of me, I think I could be totally fair. I don't have
Yeah,
a
because
problem with that.
we didn't have you on the show until I wanted to make sure that the case we were on was completely over, and that was what we waited for. That's why this took so long. So the other question is interesting is when you go to the court, do you say judge or do you say your honor, or does it not matter?
It doesn't matter to me. To other people, it might matter. I mean, it tends to be the more disciplined people, like police and military, who've been brought up on that type of discipline, always your honor or judge. And then the people that are loosey-goosey, it doesn't bother me either. I don't get hung up on the title at all.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the correct way was.
Actually, like Judge Ed.
Judge Ed,
on
there
the
you go.
float.
All right, guys, I've got to sign out now, Omri. So be quiet. I want to thank you so much, Ed, for coming here today.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, of course, Noah, for coming as well,
Thank
of
you.
course, Dr. Deb and the worst landlord, and of course, Glenn Page, who is the ultimate excellent engineer, who didn't even burst in and interrupt today. It was fantastic. So we had an interesting show today, and if you guys want to find out more about investor schooling, go to investorschooling.com. You can sign up for this Thursday's class. I promise you, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's investorschooling.com. We will see you on Thursday.
This program is paid for